Okay, chemistry unit review. That's not centered at all. Now it is. Okay. First thing we went over in chemistry. Structure and history of the atom. Okay, structure and history of the atom was the first thing that we went over. What am I going to ask about structure and history of the atom? There's probably going to be some multiple choice about models. Okay, there might be one multiple choice question about a person. Okay, I mean, there's not that many people to remember. There's like Dalton and Chadwick and Thompson and Rutherford and Bohr, right? Like, and de Broglie. Okay, so I mean, and they're pretty specific, right? I mean, if I was going to pick important people, Dalton would probably be pretty important. I mean, he came up with the atomic theory. Should you know the atomic theory? Okay, do you need to be able to write down every point from the atomic theory? No, because I don't care whether you memorized it or not, okay? But I might give you a multiple choice question that says which of the following is not part of the atomic theory or something along those lines, you know, where you'd have to show me you at least understand what it says. Okay, but do you need to memorize it and regurgitate it onto a sheet of paper? No, that's biology. Okay, again, so important people. Dalton would be important. I'd say Rutherford is pretty important because he's the one who proved the existence of the nucleus. Okay, you know, and de Broglie is the guy whose model we currently accept. So I would definitely know the current model. Okay, if I'm going to ask about, you know, drawing a picture of an atom, I'm probably not going to ask you to draw a picture of the solid sphere. Okay, I'm probably going to ask you about something a little more current than that. Okay, so for structure, I would say, you know, like draw current model. Okay, and as part of that current model, I would say you probably would have to show in that model the correct number of protons, neutrons, and electrons for that particular atom if I ask you about a specific atom. Okay, so like one of the questions on your practice test here says draw a picture of an atom of oxygen. Okay, so oxygen has 8 protons, and thus it has 8 electrons. And how do I figure out the number of neutrons? Anyone remember? Any? Exactly. Atomic mass minus atomic number tells you the number of protons. So for oxygen, it's 8. It's 888. Okay. Put them in the right places. All right. I want to know that you remember neutrons and protons are in the nucleus and electrons are in the cloud. Okay. Everybody with me there? All right. So that's what I would say for structure. History, we kind of already talked about. Kenny, question? Yes, it would matter that you drew the right number, but I'm not looking for circles or orbits or anything. So, because we had this on a quiz, right? It was on a quiz, and I said I would have been happy with this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cloud, right? And then put in the middle P equals 8, N equals 8. Or, you know, draw 8 circles with a plus sign in them and 8 circles with nothing in them, you know, or whatever. But if you do that, make sure you put a legend. Okay, just so I understand. But I mean, if you had pluses, you don't need a legend. I'll understand what that means. But if you're just drawing like weird shapes to represent things, I might not understand that diamonds are neutrons and whatever. Okay, make it common sense. Yes, they move around up and down based on their energy, right? We talked about that, how they can leap further away if they gain energy, and then when they come back, they release that energy. That was how the glow-in-the-dark stuff and photosynthesis work. Yeah. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to ask you that. That's model of the atom. Right? That's the big thing here. Okay. So yeah, this kind of stuff, I would say multiple choice. Obviously, you can't draw in a multiple choice question, so that would probably be a written response item, just like it is on your practice test. Okay. The second thing we did, naming and formulas. Formulae is actually the right word for that, plural. Okay. You guys are pretty good at that, but it's obviously something you need to be able to do because A, I will ask you specifically what's the formula for this or what's the name of that in the multiple choice. Okay, but in the written response, if I say predict the products of this reaction and I write it in words, you'd better know how to write the formulas right. Okay, or it's going to be very difficult to predict the products, balance it correctly, all of that kind of stuff, swapping and dropping. Okay, so naming and formulas, yeah, there'll be a couple of questions, just can you do it? But you have to be able to do it to do basically any of the skills beyond that. Everyone follow me there? Okay, but I mean, that's one of the basic skills. You guys are pretty good at that. All right, so that's the second thing we went over. So yeah, there'll be a couple multiple choice questions, just like there is in your practice test, about naming compounds. Okay, and then the written response questions, just like are in there, some reactions, some balancing, stuff like that. Okay, third thing we went over. Properties of compounds. Okay, we did a lab on that. So expect that I'd ask you to show me that you remember some of the things we learned from that lab. Okay, like if a question asked you, gave you a situation, let's say like you have 4 unknown compounds in front of you. You test various properties of the compounds and you find that, you know, compound A has a high conductivity and a low pH and it's clear. And compound 2 is red and has a high conductivity and is neutral, and so on. Then it would say, you know, the identities of these would be A, hydrochloric acid, or, you know, the identity of substance A would be A, hydrochloric acid, B, copper nitrate, whatever. That you'd be able to do something like that. Okay, they'd be easy ones, right? Mostly it would be, do you remember that all ionic compounds conduct electricity when they're in solution? Because that's one of the things we talked about, whereas moleculars don't, okay? You know, do you remember that acids have hydrogen in them as the metal? And they have a low pH, things like that. So, you know, I'm going to ask you to apply your knowledge. What did you learn in the properties of compounds lab? Those are probably going to be multiple choice kind of questions. Okay, and it might be something just as flat out as what's the best way to separate ionic and molecular compounds? A, pH, B, conductivity, C, observable properties, right? Something like that. Okay. All right, next thing we talked about was solubility. Okay, use your chart. That'll be the expectation. Okay, obviously there'll be some terminology that you'll need to be familiar with, like precipitate, okay, soluble, not soluble, solute, solvent, okay, the things that are, you know, that we talked about in there, because I'll use those terms in the question. I'm not going to go, you know, the thing that gets dissolved is the A, solvent, B. I'm not going to ask that, not that recallish, but I'm going to use those terms, so you need to know what they are. So there could be some multiple choice questions that say, give you a reaction. Okay, they list out the whole reaction and then say, which, if any, of the products are soluble? A, you know, only sodium chloride. B, both. C, only magnesium hydroxide. D, none, right? Or something like that. And you'd have to check your solubility chart. Okay, everyone with me there? Okay, that's what you'll be expected to do with solubility. That same lesson, we talked about some applications of that. So there'll be in the written response an application of solubility question. There's one in your practice test. Okay, it's the last one. It says you're trying to remove mercury from a solution of mercury nitrate. Describe how you could use a chemical reaction and what you know of solubility to remove that toxin. Okay, so we got to think about what kind of reactions in our reaction lab produce precipitates. Okay, you know, if I make something precipitate, then it's not soluble anymore. Does that make it possible for me to get rid of it somehow, or, you know, things like, you kind of have to. This is the men from the boys, wheat from the chaff. I'm running out of analogies. Okay, that's this question. Okay, this is the one that is the higher level thinking question. I usually put one like that on every test. Okay, that really says, hey, I really know my stuff here. Okay, or I can. It's not so much that you know your stuff, but that you can really engage your mind to a problem. All right, so it's going to be on solubility. That one there was an example of one on a previous test. Okay, so expect something like that. There's not really a way for you to actively study for that particular question because you don't know what the situation will be. Okay, but know that you'll have to understand how solubility works to answer it. Okay. Sorry, that same day we talked about the polar nature of water. Okay, so you need to be able to tell me what this means. What is a polar molecule? That would have been lesson 7, solubility in the polar nature of water. Okay, so you need to be able to tell me what's a polar molecule, right? That's the electrons aren't shared equally. One end's positive, one end's negative. Okay, we used water as the example there. And then, basically what effects can that have? We talked about how water does some weird things that other things don't do. It's got that cohesion and adhesion and all that hydrogen bonding stuff, okay, that's important, okay, for this. So there'll probably be an application type question about that, or one that'll ask you to explain what polar molecules do, okay, and how they're different. Kennedy, question. Okay, difference between cohesion and adhesion. Okay, cohesion, if we're talking about water, is water to water. Okay, adhesion is water to another polar substance, not water. Okay, so when we use the plant example, cohesion was the barrel of monkeys where they were attached to each other and they were supporting the column of water in the tree. You recall that, how it pulls the water up? Adhesion was this water molecule is stuck to the inside of the tube. Okay, so that's water to another polar molecule. That's adhesion. Okay, you can remember it this way. Adhesives glue things not alike together. Okay, cohesion, co means cooperate, two things together that are the same. Okay, all right. So yeah, you'll definitely need to know what both of those are and what being a polar molecule is. Okay, so be able to explain polar molecule. All right, and after that, we started talking about reactions. Okay, so for reactions, I mean, this is all skill-based. Know the types. I'll probably have a couple multiple choice questions that say, the reaction below is a what type, or which of the following reactions is a double replacement reaction, something like that. You got to know the types. Okay, got to be able to balance. Okay, you saw that on the practice test there's like the written response starts out with balancing questions. Guess what? Tuesday's test starts out with the written response starts out with balancing questions. Okay, so yeah, be expected that you're going to have to do that. There's also on that practice test some predicting. Also on your test, there will be predicting. Okay, and obviously, if you're going to predict, you have to be able to do these two things. You have to be able to identify the type. Okay, figure out who goes with who. Then you have to be able to swap and drop. Okay, identify ionic compounds, special molecular elements, okay, and balance equations. So this kind of encompasses everything about reactions, and there's at least a couple of questions that'll ask you to do that. Okay, if there's one thing on this exam that's worth more marks than anything else, it's this. Okay, because stuff on reactions appears in the multiple choice and it appears in the written. Okay, if I give you a prediction question, one prediction question would be 4 marks. Okay, because it'll work just like your quizzes. You get a mark for each product, so that's 2 marks. You get a mark for making sure you'd swapped and dropped. Okay, and then a mark for balancing. So okay, things like that. And then after that was the mole equation. Okay, which we'll do more on Monday. Okay, but you know how I'm going to ask it. Exactly like the problems we've been doing in class. Okay, there'll be 3. You don't know which 3. Okay, but 3 of the 4 will be on there. All right, so you got to be able to use n equals little m over big M. Okay, and I would expect that 1 or 2 of them would involve using Avogadro's number. Okay, and what do we ever do with Avogadro's number? We use it to find the number of molecules, or we use it in conjunction with the number of molecules to find the number of moles. Okay, it's always associated with those two things. Daniel? Yeah, it's on the front of the test. Yeah, and provided you don't write too many notes to yourself on your periodic table, you will use your periodic table on the unit exam. So when I come around and collect your phones, I will also look at your periodic table just to make sure you haven't written too much stuff on it. Okay, as long as it doesn't have too much stuff on it, you'll be able to use it. Okay, so what I mean by too much stuff is what I should see on your periodic table is the special elements highlighted, maybe a little something about, you know, Roman numerals or something. But if you've got detailed instructions on how to do everything written on your periodic table, then I will get you a new one. All right. Okay. All right. Let's talk about how much of everything there is here. So on your test, obviously there's some multiple choice and there's some written response. You saw that on the practice test. The format of your test will be just like that. Okay, so there are 33 multiple choice questions. Okay, I think there's 25 on that practice test I gave you. And the reason there's 25 on your practice test is there's several questions that are on here that would be repeats of a similar type of question to what's on your practice test. So for example, on that practice test, I think there's only one multiple choice question about reaction types, but on yours there might be two. Okay, or there might be 4 questions about naming, and on that there's only 2. Okay, that's why there's more on this. And then in the written response, there are 6 written response questions. Okay, and like I said, it's exactly the same as your practice test. There's one that's about balancing. Okay, and there's 7 reactions that just need balancing, nothing else, just balancing. Okay, the second question has 4 reactions that have to be predicted and balanced. Third question is a structure of the atom question. Fourth question is a mole equation question, and sorry, I forgot, there's one of each kind. There's 4. There's one of each kind of mole equation question. So you know they're all on there. Now you don't have to worry about it. You know they're all on there. Okay, there's 4. The fifth question is the water question. Okay, the polar nature of water, right? And the 6th question is the one I was telling you about, that's the higher level thinking involves solubility question. Okay. Which part of the test should you do first? Nope. Do the written first. Okay. Reason I suggest that is this. If you do there's more marks in the written. Okay, there's 33 multiple choice, so that's 33 marks. There's 51 marks in the written. Okay, and if you get pressed for time, I don't think you will, but if you do, it's better to have to rush 4 multiple choice questions than to have to rush a question in the written response where you had to write a paragraph about something. Okay, way easier to go, I got 4 multiple choice questions left. That one seems like a B, that seems like a C, right? Like it's way easier to do that than it is to go, I got to write nothing because I just don't have time. Right? And I don't think time should be an issue. All right. The way I know that is I make up the key and I time myself. All right. I figure it should take you between 3 and 4 times as long to do the test as it takes me. Okay. And it took me 18 minutes to write the test. Okay. Now, I mean, granted, it should take you 3 to 4 times as long. I made up the test, so I should be able to do it pretty fast. All right. But I figured that gives you over 4 times as long to get this test done. So I don't think time will be a problem. All right. That said, you want to avoid this. oh man, I don't know how to do that question. I don't know how to do that question. I don't know how to do that question. And you just stare at that question you don't know how to do. Okay, don't do that. All right, that's not productive. If you look at a question and you don't know what to do, move on. Okay, move on. Do the next one. Okay, if when you're done all the written, you're still looking at that question and you don't know how to do it, leave it. Go and do the multiple choice. Sometimes there's little hints in the multiple choice about things that might be in the written and vice versa. Okay, so never stall on a question. Never stall. Okay, if you stall, you're losing time, and you don't want that. Okay, if when you first read a question you're not sure, go past it. Okay, as long as that's not every single question, you'll be okay. Okay, I know I had that experience in university on my first organic chemistry test. I had 27 questions, 3-hour exam, and I read through it the first time, and I was able to do 3. I did 3 questions first time through. Second time through, I was pretty sure I'd gotten 2 more. By the time the 3 hours was over, I was absolutely certain I had done 9 questions reasonably correct. That wasn't a good feeling. Class average on that test was 38%. University students, class average is 38%. I got 39. Yeah, they grade on the curve in university though, so you can fail and pass. Doesn't seem right, but as long as you're smarter than more than half of the people, you pass. The curve is wonderful in a situation like that. Okay, the curve is really bad if you're in a class full of really, really smart people. Okay, because then you get like 92 and you get a 4 out of 9. Because everybody else got 98, and you're just like, man, I'm so stupid. Okay, no. So you guys don't have to worry about that because you don't get graded on the curve. Curve is, yeah. There's surfing the curve, that's the 39 and I passed, and then there's getting crushed by the wave, that's the 92 and got a 4. Okay, yeah, you don't want that. Okay, all right, so just remember the things you want to do over the weekend, okay? Do the suggested activities here. That's a good way to get ready to test yourself, okay? You test yourself with the practice test. If you do well on the practice test, you're done. Okay? If you get a good mark on the practice test, okay, good for you, all right, then you're done. Okay? You know this stuff, and you don't need to spend hours and hours more. Okay? Don't do that. All right? Okay, is everyone a little bit more at ease? Okay, you have a pretty good idea what I'm going to ask. Okay, so you know exactly what to focus on. That should make you able to work smarter, not harder. Dylan. Yep. Yes. All right, so you got a little bit of time. There's about 5 minutes left in class. If you want to start looking at some of that review stuff, that's probably not a bad use of time. Using class time as opposed to time at home is also classified as smarter, not harder. Okay? There's one balancing question that's kind of a, you know, the people who really know how to balance will get this one, and the people that are only so good at balancing might not. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, whatever tissue it affects. Like, if you're looking at nicotine and cigarette smoke, it's obviously affecting the lungs and the heart. Whereas heroin is more brain and nervous tissue. Alcohol is more liver and kidneys, and yeah. Yep. Okay, guys. One other thing here. On Monday, scheduled help and lunch hour. Okay, if you come up with more questions or there's something that stymies you over the weekend, okay, scheduled help on Monday and lunch on Monday. Come in and ask. Okay, that's your best bet. Okay, for anything that gives you any confusion or difficulty.